As a daughter of immigrants, I feel a tug between two cultures. Americans live so fast-paced and independent of one another, while Filipinos really cling to community, the mentality of wanting what you have, as opposed to getting what you want. I have many Filipino-American friends, and I always wondered if they also felt stuck between two cultures. While we share many similar experiences, their stories are so different from mine.
My father is Filipino. My mom is white. My dad came here from the Philippines when he was a teenager. He was in a band with his sisters, and they immigrated here, I think, in the 70s. And he came played drums and guitar with them.
That's cool.
Their band was called Shades of Brown, the SOPs.
Before they came to the U.S., they had started dating as teenagers back in the Philippines. Unfortunately, my mom wasn't supposed to be dating yet, and my grandparents at the time pretty much broke off their relationship by moving her somewhere. My dad's family had decided that they're going to immigrate to the U.S., so he had no clue where she was. My mom had no idea where he was. It had been about 10 years before my dad heard about my mom again. It so happened that one of their close friends came out to the U.S. My dad asked about my mom and got her number, and they started talking again. A year or two later, he goes out to the Philippines. They get married, and he brings her back to the States.
I wasn't born in the U.S. I was actually born in the Philippines, but I was given automatic U.S. citizenship because I was born on technically American soil, U.S. naval base. It was actually my dad that moved to the Philippines. He was working in the Navy. That's where he met my mom. He was in the Philippines for 19 years. I was born in 92. I moved here in 2008, so it hasn't been that long.
My parents were involved in some political stuff back in the Philippines, my dad especially. They were both academics, and so my dad contributed to a book which kind of smeared the name of Marcos, and so he was set to be executed via firing squad. They uprooted their lives and came here. They worked odd-end jobs when they first got here. Like, my mom was a maid, my dad was a parking attendant. They just kept working, even though both my parents went to great schools, and because they were immigrants and they had this huge family with them, they had to kind of make ends meet any way they could. So they eventually were able to start teaching again.
They moved to the States like early 80s. First, my dad came. He wanted to get a place first so that, they'll be ready. They have a place ready when they immigrate. That was like, maybe a few weeks or a few months later. And then they kind of just, worked odd jobs, and they explained to me that they shared like this one-bedroom apartment with this Jewish couple, and then they stayed in the living room. My mom, my dad, 2 kids, staying on a sofa, some random apartment in Chicago. And I was born a few years after they immigrated here, also the first American-born in my family. When I hear American people talking about taking care of their elderly, it's, all right, I'm going to find you a nice nursing home. Let's find a nursing home for you. Not like, whereas in the Filipino culture, it's like, they're going to be living with you. Your parents will be living, and my grandparents lived with my family for a time.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, that's an interesting quintessential Filipino thing.
Right, like, oh, we're gonna live with you, Jacqueline. You better take care of us. That kind of thing.
Right.
Just because I'm the oldest and I'm also the female.
I come from a very big family. I don't even know how many cousins I have.
Numerically, I don't know how much we actually are, but there's a lot.
My family is really big, both here in America and in the Philippines. I really couldn't tell you an exact number.
Oh, my family's huge, I think.
There is a lot of us. And It used to be a kind of a joke with me and my friends where I'm like, oh, I can't hang out this weekend. I'm going to my cousin's birthday. And they're like, didn't you go to one last week? I was like, yeah, but this is my other cousin.
I love how Filipinos are very family oriented. Like your family will never, leave you, or they would always have your back no matter what. Yeah. Because I remember living in the Philippines, and we lived in a compound where pretty much all of our cousins, my aunts, we're in the same compound.
Yeah.
It's just different houses.
I wish I would have grown up like that.
Yeah, and it was
That
fun.
sounds like
You
fun.
wake up in the morning, and then you just see your cousins go play outside.
Yeah. Plucking chicken.
I think the biggest difference between like the previous generation, which was my uncles, my dad, and my mom, and my generation, was that this previous generation was all about working, all about starting your career as fast as you can, all about getting a career in medicine. And even now, my mom tells me, asks me when I'm going to medical school, even after I've finished. I'm already starting my career. Like she's still waiting.
Have you ever felt like kind of like the odd man out?
Yeah, I felt like the odd man out with Filipinos and also with white people. Like when I went to the Philippines, that's like all they wanted to talk about. How fair I was.
Oh, exactly.
That they're so jealous, that they want fair skin.
I
And
know. They praise light skin so much.
Right.
It's like, oh, you're so white. Like, must be nice.
Yeah, is it? Like, why are people... Because I've seen stories of people getting their skin dyed or, like, bleached or something. What? Why?
My family convinced me to get an injection to make my skin fair. And it made my skin fair. I looked like a bowl of cream almost. They said it would detox, but I don't think it detoxed anything. I learned from another doctor that what they injected me with was a pesticide.
I mean, it stems from like Spanish colonization
Yeah.
because back then, all the Filipinos, like the actual Filipinos that lived in the Philippines, they were working the fields, and it's
Right.
always the Spanish ones that are inside the house doing
Right.
nothing.
Staying
So,
out of the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of Filipino culture is a mixture of everything too. Spanish,
true.
Chinese,
Yeah.
some
All
of
the
Japanese.
superstitions.
Yeah. It pretty much started lots of centuries ago. The Spaniards came, the Chinese came, and then not even a century ago, the US were there. You can see it everywhere in the Philippines, from food to architecture, even social norms that the Filipinos have came from other cultures.
My relatives in the Philippines are so different than my relatives here. I feel like they're so much happier that
Oh,
they
really?
have so much less. That's what I loved about the Philippines, is how warm the people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not just my family, just people that worked in the stores,
Right.
and everybody was just really sweet, always smiling.
The best part of being Filipino-American is the sense of community there is. Because even if you don't have a big family as a Filipino, you kind of have a built-in family with other Filipinos automatically. Like, so many times I've run into Filipinos and they'll be like, "Are you Filipino?" And there's just an instantaneous bond.
Best part of being a Filipino-American for me is just that I get to share what I love about being Filipino with so many of my friends who are not Filipino. I found that a lot of my friends love Filipino culture, and so it's a lot of fun to share the food and the fact that, yeah, we are singing karaoke at every family party. And I don't know, a lot of my friends have never experienced that, especially the big blowouts with a lot of people and everyone's your cousin, everyone's your aunt, I've loved sharing that with people who are not Filipino.
You have the advantage of being exposed to another culture. Not a lot of people don't, but if you just try to know a different culture, even if you're not even mixed or biracial, but just trying to be exposed to another culture lets you be more open-minded about a lot of stuff. And just not being ethnocentric, thinking that what your culture or what you do is always right. And just because they do something different, that it's wrong.
I I think the great thing about being Filipino-American, in particular a second or first generation Filipino-American, is that I feel like I am at a great transition point between like the Americanization of my family. I feel like I am a little bit more assimilated, while still having this respect for where I've been, and where my family's been, but still transition to being a part of this melting pot that is America.
Take me back to the place I love. 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 Love, love, love.